Missed all of you so much. Welcome back, everybody. If you're watching this live, it is currently Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Daily Cooking Show. Welcome to the Daily Cooking Stream. And I see that we have all of the classics in chat at the moment, all of my regulars. It's so good to see all of you. We have Holken joining us. I see that we have Trash Can Cat Mom. We have Kaze. We have Lego Batman Fan, Dolingo, Liam, Jack, Kaze as well. We have everybody. Hi. I'm not muted today. Okay, I'm not muted today. Also, hello to Liam, hello to Gush Limpa, hello to Emikin. Hi, it's good to see all of you. I missed you all so much. How's your Fridays going? Welcome on in. Everybody, as a little heads up today before we even get into anything, I want to specify that today's stream is going to be a slightly shorter one. So maybe shooting like a little bit under 2 hours or so. I see that Elim is already in chat typing an exclamation mark menu. Also, hello to Dr. Slowbro and hello to Rabbit Raisins. Welcome on in. Also, no worries at all. It's good to have you here nonetheless. Hi. So yes, today's stream is going to be a slightly shorter one. I just have some plans afterwards, so I intentionally paced this to be like a little bit shorter in length. I hope that's okay. I'm excited to talk about today. I'm excited because I have a lot of thoughts on the subject matter, and I have a lot of opinions that I want to share. So today, my friends, for anybody that is just now joining us, you can also type an exclamation mark menu in chat at any given moment. We are going to be making some pork chops today. We're going to be doing a red wine sauce, basically a red wine gravy for them, with some mushrooms, like a mushroom red wine sauce. And alongside it, we're going to serve like this really, really beautiful, really creamy, soft mashed potato. Okay? And so, this is actually something I'm fairly opinionated on. I feel like a lot of the people that grew up in the United States, or at least, you know, in the United States, Canada, they grew up, if they're American speaking, if they're American, they grew up eating pork chops a couple of times a week for dinner. I did not. I never really had that sort of association. I grew up in a Russian Jewish family. But a lot of people, I feel like, have a very negative connotation with like pork chops. It's not like the meal that they ever really looked forward to. They never really looked forward to eating like steamed boiled broccoli with it or anything. And so, I'm pretty excited to show you my take on it and how we can make it a little bit exciting. Now, I do have something to say. If you go online, if you go on the internet and you look up any of the ways that people, they show you like a pork chop recipe nowadays, right? Any sort of content creator, and I want to say the last 10 to 15 years, the way that they show you to make a pork chop will always be using a very, very thick cuts of meat, really, really thick cuts of meat, and they're cooking it and treating it like a steak. And that's great and all, but here is the issue with that. In a good chunk of the country, I feel like, especially when you're constantly shopping at really big supermarkets, those kinds of like really, really thick cuts of pork aren't particularly accessible to you. And getting like a very nice cut of pork from like a very nice pig as well. I mean, you'd have to go out of your way to a pretty nice butcher shop to get a very decent pork chop like that. A lot of people are used to fairly like thin cut pork chops. And so what I want to show you today is a way to make that kind of pork chop exciting. Okay? And so there's a very important middle ground. People go either direction with this kind of thing. You can treat it like a steak. You can treat a pork chop like a steak, where you're cooking it to like, I don't know, like 140, 135 degrees internal, and you have like these nice big thick slices. Or you can go the complete opposite direction, which is to essentially sear it and then simmer it in your sauce and get it like super, super like broken down, almost braised in your sauce. Like people would, you know, they'd like simmer it in the gravy for about 40 minutes in length. And I'm doing somewhere in between those. But you have to be careful, because the thing that you do not want most, you don't want a pork chop that's cooked to about 160. You don't want a pork chop that's cooked to like 170. It's just going to be tough and dry and chewy. But we're still going to finish it in the sauce, but it's not going to be like the super thick cut of steak. So let me show you my pork chops that I have. These bad boys. Okay. Also, really quickly, I want to talk about the naming of these. People call a lot of different cuts of pork chops. These are, if I am not mistaken, pork like ribeyes. People, they take cuts of pork from either the strip loin, or they take it from the ribeye, or they even do like a T-bone cross section, or even the shoulder, and they just cut it into steaks, and they all call it pork chops. And they're all really, really different cuts. This is from the ribeye section. Okay, you can tell because of like this little cat muscle on the outside. This is if you were comparing it to a beef, this would be the ribeye. Okay, these were super cheap. These weren't really, really nice cuts of pork anyways. That's why I'm going to be treating them in the way that I am today. We're not going to be cooking it like a steak by any means. I'll show you exactly what we do with these. So I bought these, I put them on a sheet tray, and I heavily salted it. We dry brine these, and we'll talk about the functionality of a dry brine, of course. But it's really, really important to have nice, flavorful, especially moist pork. Okay, next. we're going to be building a bit of a red wine mushroom sauce. So I have some red wine here, the kind I don't think matters too much. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon, but I honestly don't care, and I cook with any kind of red wine that I have on hand. But we'll be doing this in the sauce a little bit today. Additionally, I have some white button mushrooms. Okay, so these are just basically white button mushrooms. You can use any kind of mushroom that you would like here. I'm just going for super simple, really like cheap ingredients today. Today is all about making comfort food, and I'm going to show you how with a little bit of technique, we can make it really special and give it a lot of love, a lot of care, and a lot of attention. Okay, so some mushrooms. And then also going into the sauce that we'll be making, we'll have a little splash, the tiniest little splash of soy sauce, just to give it some more oomph, just to give it some more meatiness. It's always really nice to do that whenever you're making some sort of like a pan sauce. I love having a little dripping of soy sauce going in there. And then for the mashed potatoes, it's going to be really simple. I got some spuds, I got some potatoes, some gold potatoes that we used last time. We're going to boil them. We're going to make a mashed potato. Everybody, today is simple home comfort food. It's going to be really simple, but we're going to really pay attention to the texture of everything, and I'm going to show you how to make it delicious. Okay, we're going to give everything a lot of love, a lot of care, a lot of affection. Treat this the way that you want to be treated. Okay? Okay, on that topic, on that note, we also have a little mallet. We're going to have a little mallet, and we're going to be basically pounding the hell out of our pork chops today. So we're going to be pounding them out, not like super thin or anything. We're going to be using this spiky side of it just to get some perforations in the pork. It holds onto the flour a lot better that way. We're going to be thickening the sauce up with a little bit of flour. So yeah, really simple stuff. I'm using up some leftover parsley. I have these leftover potatoes. I have that leftover onion behind me. With that being said, I believe we're ready to begin. Is everybody ready? Are you ready for some really delicious pork chops? I want to hear yes, chef. Perfect. That's what I want to hear. It's good to have all of you. I missed all of you so much. And once again, everybody, before we begin, let's do the Patreon plug. If you would like, you can type an exclamation mark Patreon chat. You can scroll down. You can go into the About section. Everybody, I really could use some help covering the grocery costs for these streams because groceries are expensive. I want to keep these streams free. I want to keep them advertisement free especially. And in order to be able to do that, I need a little bit of help from you. So if you can, any little bit helps on the Patreon. It'd go a pretty long way. Okay, that being said, I believe we can begin. So once again, today's going to be a fairly short stream. I think we're only going to go for like an hour and a half or so. So I apologize. I just have some stuff to do later today, and I just wanted to keep it simple. Sometimes it's okay for things to be kept simple. Okay, I think we can begin. So here's the order of operations. We got to peel the potatoes. We got to chop up the mushrooms. We got to chop up the onions. We got to pound out the pork. We got to season it up. Well, not season it, but we have to cover it with the flour. We have to mince up the garlic. Yeah, we have some stuff to do. We've got some stuff to do. Let's do the fun part first. Let's pound some pork. Let's go ahead and get that done. So let's go on over here. Let's go to my overhead camera. And yes, you can always just type an exclamation mark YouTube if you would like to catch the VODs at any point in time. So take a look. My cutting board is laid out. This is my meat cutting board that I'd like to just use and specifically dedicate to that. I'm going to take out a couple of paper towels here just so that we can blot the pork dry. So everybody, as always, look at this pork. Look at this pork. Okay, this pork, I bought it today and I put it on a sheet tray with a wire rack in a fridge. You can just put it on a plate. You can just put it on a sheet tray. But I love doing this anytime I buy meat from the supermarket so it's not sopping wet. You buy meat from a supermarket, they put it in a plastic bag, you take it home, and it's really wet and it's really unpleasant to work with. Additionally, we heavily cover this thing in salt. This is a process called dry brining. You would like to do this ideally 4 hours to like 8 hours in advance. And what this allows us, first of all, the salt is going to penetrate, it's going to dissolve, it's going to physically go within the pork chop, but more importantly, dry brining is extremely functional. By salting it heavily in advance, you increase its moisture retention. Okay, so as this cooks, it's actually going to hold on to more liquid. And that might not make a lot of sense because you might be like, whoa, doesn't salt pull out the liquid? Trust me, there's a lot of sciencey things going on. First, salt pulls out some of the liquid. And then the meat essentially absorbs it back in like a sponge. It takes in as much as it needs. And the salty water has a lot of increased moisture retention inside of the pork itself. So by dry brining it, once again, we keep it nice and juicy. And I prefer doing dry brines over wet brines. Okay, a wet brine would be if somebody was like injecting this with like salty liquid or just keeping it in a saline solution. I like doing dry brines as opposed to wet ones because we're going to be covering this with flour. And we don't want a piece of meat that's like too wet if we're covering it in flour. And then also, if we wanted to just get like a straight pantsuit on it, and the meat is like wet and it's wet brined, it's going to be a mess. It's going to leach out a bunch of excess liquid onto the pan. I don't love doing that for cuts like this. So, dry brining all the way. Is that clear? Does everybody understand? I want to hear you, chef. Thank you. And once again, if anybody has any questions during this process, just let me know. Yeah, chef, perfect. Okay, maybe chef. Whoa, Jack, you are going through it today. It's lovely to have you, though. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, though, we're going to blot these bad boys dry. Because, again, they've been air drying in the fridge somewhat. But we would still want to get rid of, like, any of that, like, excess liquid off of them. I'm happy to have you, Jack. Okay. Just got to adjust my hair really quickly. So, once again, the way to think about these pork chops is these are essentially, you know, ribeyes. This is the same exact cut that you would see on the ribeyes, just because you can tell, like, this is the center muscle right here, and this little cap on the outside is like what we would call the decal on a ribeye. Okay, and so pork chops, people typically cut them, you can get them from the strip loin, you can get them, you know, you can do a whole cross section and get some of the tenderloin and the strip loin. People get it from a bunch of different places, and they all call it the same thing. So the best thing that you can do is look at it, compare it to a cut of steak, and be like, wait, I feel like this looks like that cut of steak, and it probably came from the same place. So Zio says, I thought wet brining was more for roasting and barbecuing. Now, yes, you would be correct. However, a lot of supermarket pre-seasoned meat, a lot of pre-packaged meat, is actually in advance wet brined, even like thin cuts like this. And it's like sopping wet, and it's super unpleasant to work with. It's lovely to have you, Dosky. It's lovely to have you, Moonha. So, we're blotting these bad boys dry, okay? It's done its job for us. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to slightly trim these up, okay? And we gotta talk about the function of that really quickly. So, there's a couple of reasons why your food, especially like your seared meats, end up getting tough. One of them is overcooking. Think of meat like a sponge. When you overcook it, right? When you're cooking it, the proteins are essentially shrinking. They wound up tighter and tighter, and they're pushing out a lot of liquid, okay? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that we're never really overcooking these pork chops unless we want to break them down and braise them. The way to think about it is, again, it's like a sponge. It pushes out liquid, pushes out, and then let's say you hit like 180 internal, right? And then it like collapses, and then it starts shredding up really nicely. That's how you get like very like melt in your mouth braised meat. And if it's ever tough and chewy, you probably have it in between 150 to 170 degrees. That's how you get meat that's really, really tough and chewy. The second reason why it might be tough and chewy, okay, let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to show you right now. Is depending on the cut of meat, okay, you're going to have some bands of connective tissue run through it. This is a little bit of fat on the outside and then a little bit of connective tissue. And the connective tissue is super tough, super chewy unless you actually physically braise it. Now, there is a reason why some cuts of steak, or some cuts are actually called steaks, or some cuts are called chops, and there's some that are called, you know, like just used for braising or just stew meat. And it has to do with the positioning of the connective tissue. The connective tissue on something like a ribeye, the reason why this kind of a steak, this kind of a cut lends itself super nicely to searing, okay, is because it's not dispersed throughout the meat. Sure, you have a couple of bands of it here and here and here, but ultimately, you only have a slight cap of it on the outside. Same deal here, you have a cap of it on the outside, and then it goes inside into the decal. This cut has the decal, this cut does not have the decal. Okay, and so we're going to slightly trim this off. We're going to slightly trim it off, and we're not going to get rid of all of it. We're not going to go super crazy with it, but it is going to help make our product more tender at the end of the day. So that's how we stop us from having a super tough and chewy pork chop. We don't overcook it, and we're trimming off some of the connective tissue. I'm not going to trim all of it off, because in order to do that, we actually have to go in there and separate the decal, and I don't personally care enough about doing that. Okay, also welcome on in, Banner. Also, these are not sigils on my list. Chef, to use butter oil for the pork, in this case, I'm going to be using some chicken fat. But I would recommend using a very nice animal fat for something like this. But yes, this is Nanika from Hunter x Hunter. I'd recommend using an animal fat because we're going to be using that to essentially build a sauce. We're going to be using the fat to build a sauce after. And you want to have a really, really tasty fat. Okay. something that you would just enjoy the taste of. So I'm not going to fry this in a neutral oil or anything. The reason I wouldn't fry these in butter is because the butter has a tendency to burn at higher temperatures. If you wanted to use a butter, I would recommend using a clarified butter. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, my friends, we're just going to trim this off slightly. So all we're going to do is just get a knife in there. We're going in between the connective tissue and the meat. Okay, we're making a little incision. And all we're going to do is just slightly trim these off if we can. It's a little bit awkward to trim this off like when it's already like a steak. So what you can do is you can make like your initial incision and then just sort of pull it back and clean it up this way. Okay, and again, you want to have as little meat on this little scrap of connective tissue as you can. Isn't it easy to trim off when it's cooked? Not necessarily, and we're going to be slightly flouring this, so I wouldn't want to like trim this off after it's cooked or anything. For me, it's a lot easier to do this now. If it wasn't breaded, if it wasn't getting floured at all, then sure, I guess it would be easier to do it when it's cooked. But okay. So just like that, again, we don't have to go super crazy. We're not going to get rid of all of these little bands. We're just getting rid of a little bit. So it's going to prevent like the edge from being too chewy. Okay, we have no use for it. Let's do the same thing to the other one. What's the best all-around neutral oil for daily stuff? To clean the chest, I personally love using peanut oil. I find for whatever reason, corn oil really reminds me of gasoline. I don't know why, but I've definitely smelled corn oil before that has really felt like gasoline. I don't know if that's an experience that other people have had. But I like using peanut oil as my daily oil. Okay, so we're just going to go into this next piece, and we're going to do the same exact thing. We're just trimming it off, and we're going to stop. We're not going to go all the way through the decal. Yes, Jack, I love sunflower oil. A lot of Russians, that's like their neutral oil of choice. That's what we grew up like frying things in. We grew up frying things in sunflower seed oil. Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the neutral oils do tend to get like pretty samey, just like different cultures end up using different ones. And they have very slight taste variations in between them. Okay, again, it's fine. We're not going to overthink this process or anything because it's mostly on the outside. If we get a few chewy pieces, then so be it. Okay, so it's mostly trimmed up. And again, if you would like, you can completely take off this decal. But I'm just going to keep it on, make my life a little bit easier. And grab it raisins. Olive oil is not normally neutral oil because if it's an extra virgin olive oil, it keeps a lot of like the solids inside and a lot of the things that give it the taste. If it's a refined olive oil, then it can be used as a neutral oil. So you can see that sometimes sold in stores, at least in the United States, as light olive oil or frying olive oil. That would be a little bit closer to a neutral oil. Okay, so we have the 2 pork chops right here, and now it's time for the fun bit. Everybody, let's talk about etiquette when using one of these bad boys. So, you have 2 sides. You have a spiky side and you have a smooth side. Also, thank you, Water. I appreciate it. You have a spiky side and you have a smooth side. The smooth side is when you don't want perforations. The spiky side is when you want perforations. So why would we use a spiky side? Does it significantly tenderize it? It does a little bit. What you're doing is you're mechanically breaking it up a little bit and you're shortening some of the muscle fibers. So it's going to make it a little bit easier for it to cut into. Additionally, it's going to give us a little bit of pockets that the breading will be, or rather just the flour will be able to go into as well. And so the idea is we're going to slightly flatten these so they're not like super thick or anything. You can tell that's a fairly thick pork chop. That's like 1.5 inches. Okay. So we're going to be slightly pounding these out. So they're a little bit thinner and getting some holes in with this. So there's 2 kinds of mallets. There's mallets that are essentially like this. They don't have like a handle attached to them and you just sort of like press down and use gravity. And then there's sort of the mallet style. Okay, this is where they have a handle. I prefer mallet styles because you're able to use like the force of gravity a little bit with you. Whereas when you're using like a sort of vertical up and down one, you have to get like really on top of it and you have to use a lot more force, I find in my experience. Okay, so a little bit different technique there. So we're just going to be naturally using, right, the leverage that it gives us. So all we have to do, oh yeah, wait, everybody, what time is it? Oh honey, it's 5:19 p.m. EST. It's time for your pork chop flattening. I wanted to do one really dramatic one. We don't actually have to hit it that hard. Everything is, okay, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna take a few things off so they wouldn't like flop around my table because it's gonna get a little bit loud here. I might have also chosen a different table. You wish that were you? What does that mean? What fell? Something fell off my table. Oh, my vegetable peeler. Okay, we'll get it after. Ideally, you wouldn't want to do this on like a stainless steel kitchen island, which is what I have. Maybe like a harder countertop. It'll be fine. Okay, so again, we're not going for too thin here. We just want to make sure that these two are going to be fairly equal in thinness. At the end of the day, we're just looking for equal thinness. Guys, we're just flattening some meat here. Everybody relax. Everybody in chat, calm down and say sorry, chef, right now. This is a family-friendly show. Oh, I accidentally did a gesture on my iPad and it wanted to undo something. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing to the other side. We're gonna flip it around and we're gonna make some mechanical perforations. Something like that. Yeah, that should be okay. And we're gonna do the other side. Okay, I like that everybody's apologizing now. You should all feel bad. So by the way, if we were just doing a pan-seared pork chop, we wouldn't necessarily be doing this step. This is only because I'm going to be flouring this up a little bit later. Ooh, my iPad's about to slide off my table because of this. Okay. I think that should be fine. That should be okay. What do you think, everybody? Has the flattening concluded? We're just going to be using regular all-purpose flour, Moonham. Okay, that should be okay. Everybody take a look. We got these two beautifully pounded out pork chops. We're still keeping it relatively thick. Again, you don't want paper thin unless you're going to be like braising it down or just flash cooking it. Right? We don't want like super paper thin, but we don't want it to be like so thick that it's going to be raw on the inside. And this is then going to hold on to the breading a little bit better. I am going to go ahead and take these guys and I'm going to throw them behind me really quickly on my sheet tray. And they're going to chill out until we're ready to actually flour them. Nice and easy. Okay? We're keeping it simple today. We're keeping it real simple. So I'm going to take a second to clean up and then we'll move on with everything else. Can I please get a yes, chef? Please and thank you. And I'll throw my cutting board into my dishwasher because once again, everybody, we're cooking at home. Right, so we got to clean as we go. And speaking of cleaning, I am also going to quickly clean up my knife because it has been contaminated with pork. I want to clean it up so that we can move on to everything else that we've got to do. And again, everybody, I want to really emphasize, today we're doing really simple, cheap home cooking. This is not an extremely nice like pork chop that I bought for like $15 a pound at a butcher shop. This was a very whatever pork chop that I got at my local supermarket for $3 a pound. Okay? $3 a pound pork chops. Listen to me doing Coinbox, you're the goat. Thank you, Clown Girl. I appreciate it. So it's really simple. It's really simple. It's really cheap, accessible home food. The reason why I don't love the super contemporary way of cooking pork chops, as in cooking them like a steak, is because it requires you to have a pork chop that is good enough to be treated like a steak. You want to go to a butcher shop for those, right? You want to get like a very nice cut of pork for something like that. You want to get like something from like a very nice pig, but that's not the majority of the pork in the United States. This is a whatever pork chop, so I'm going to be showing you how to process it for something like this. We're going to be keeping it really simple and delicious. So everybody, let's just do a little recap session. We've accomplished one thing and one thing only. We dry brined the pork chops a few hours before we started the stream with just a bunch of salt. I air dried it and then we trimmed it up. We got rid of some of the excess connective tissue so that it's not too tough, and then we pounded it out. And that's going to help it stick to the flour and help just a little bit mechanically tenderize it, just ever so slightly. Let's get another cutting board set up and let's move on with everything else that we need to do. Again, there's not a lot of prep today. Today's stream is going to be super simple. Today's stream is going to be super quick. And I'll show you all how to get it done. So, cutting board. These are mushrooms that I have already cleaned before the stream. All I did was I stemmed them. I saved the stems to use like in a stock, or you can throw them away. You can also keep them on if you'd like. And then I cleaned off the tops of them. So for the mushrooms, for the mushrooms, you need to remember that the texture of a mushroom really, really collapses. Okay? The mushroom, it loses basically like half of its volume and it shrinks up. Anybody that's cooked with mushrooms has probably experienced this. And so we don't want to cut it too fine. We don't have to waste our time doing that too much. Also, thank you, Blessed Ranger. Just think about the size of the pieces that you want in your mouth. So I'm thinking I want these like fairly small button mushrooms. I want them quartered up. In fact, you know what? Maybe I'm even feeling a slice today. I'm feeling a sliced mushroom, something like this, something along these lines, okay? Again, you don't have to cut them super perfectly. They all collapse. They all get kind of samey at the end of the day. So we're just going through each of these and we're just chopping them up a little bit, okay? Just think about the size of the pieces that you want. I just want to be able to confidently pour this over like my pork chops. I want them to become a part of the sauce, right? I don't want like a massive, massive piece of mushroom or anything. I want it to be able to fully cover the pork chop. And I'll show you exactly what we do with these because we're using a little bit more of a modern method with cooking mushrooms. We're going to be doing the water method with those, right? Where we put it into a pan with a little bit of liquid and we let all the water evaporate and then we add in fat afterwards. So that'll be pretty exciting. So let's just keep going on through all these mushrooms. Again, the prep on these things is super easy. They've already been cleaned. They've already been washed up. And a lot of people say, oh, especially French chefs, they say, excuse me, allow me to do my French chef impression. Oh, you cannot use le water cleaning your mushroom. It will get soggy. French chef everywhere has said that at some point or not in their lives. And the reality is, if we're going to be cooking mushrooms, so mushrooms are very porous. Okay, they're mostly comprised of chitin. They are essentially super saturated with liquid. When mushrooms cook, they're going to flood the pan anyways with water. So the entire idea with the way that we cook mushrooms is we're intentionally going to start them off in water. They're going to release a bunch of that liquid, evaporate some of it, and then suck it back up. And then that way they'll be perfectly saturated with as much liquid as they need. Okay? I never start my mushrooms off in fat anymore because they tend to soak it up and they pour out the liquid anyways and they won't get a good color on them. So we start them out of water and you'll see exactly what we do with these. So let's take these bad boys and scoop them up. And I'm going to use my bench scraper just to make sure that I'm getting rid of all these little mushroom scraps and putting it back in. And wait for my cutting board. Have I tried mushrooms with a honey and stock sauce? I mean, I think that's a fairly basic thing. I can imagine how it tastes, Jack. Okay, so mushrooms have been chopped up, nice and easy. Next, let's move on to the onion. Now that I'm like 30 minutes into the stream, I've realized, guys, this stream might be less than an hour and a half long today. I really do apologize. I did not expect it to be like, I was assessing what I had and I'm like, oh, wait, shit, this is gonna be a really short stream today. So, onion. So this onion is going to go into the sauce, okay? I don't want really, really massive pieces of onion or anything. I want to be able to bite into the mushroom. I want the onion to essentially dissolve with the sauce. You can use shallots. You can use any kind of allium that you have at home. Nothing I'm teaching you here is a recipe. The beauty of having an allium going into a mushroom red wine sauce like this is it's going to contribute a lot of really nice natural sweetness, okay? This also depends on the type of mushroom and dish. I would say yes, John. Sometimes you want like to use like a brush if it's like, you know, morel mushroom. It depends. But for like white buttons, for shiitakes and stuff, you can wash them and you'll be fine. So I want a nicely finely minced onion. The reason I want a finely minced onion is because I want it to melt into the sauce and contribute all of its beautiful sweetness. Okay, so here's what we do. This is a quarter of an onion that I had left over. We're going to essentially make a bunch of parallel incisions and fan this out. Thin parallel incisions, but we're keeping the root of the onion intact. This is the root. This was where the head was. Okay? We're doing a bunch of parallel incisions. Yeah, you got it, a nameless. Do not remove the root. So you can see we have this onion fanned out, and we're going to give it a quarter turn. We're going to stack it up on this other side, and we're going to do the same exact thing. Okay? And some of it is going to fall apart, and that's okay. Just don't go too crazy with this. Okay? Trust the process. Trust the process, okay? And now we can get a nice, beautiful, easy, fine mince on all of this onion. Look at that. And again, I want all of this to dissolve into the sauce. I want it to make it nice and sweet. This is really, really important to have an allium in the sauce, right? And so, you know, traditionally for like if you in like the French school of thought, you would use like a shallot or something like that. I had a red onion. I'm gonna use up a red onion, right? Alliums are super, super interchangeable. And you don't need a lot. This was a pretty big red onion. I'm only going to be using a quarter of it, if that. So we're just going through all of it, and we're chopping it up. We're getting to the end of it. Excellent. I didn't have my waste bowl set up today. I'm an awful chef. I'm not sure what you're asking me, Jack. Okay, and we have a couple of big pieces left over, so all we're going to do is just go and pass through these. Lovely. Okay. And we're going to take this all, and we're going to scoop it up, and we're going to put it on our comically tiny plate. It's going to spill out a little bit, but we'll pile it up, and it'll be fine. But yeah, Jack, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. Also, welcome on in, Dennis. Hello, hello. Oh, gotcha. I understand. Also, hello to Taza, and also hello to Duolingo. So, everybody, we're moving fast today. I really do apologize for how short this is going to be. I think I might have actually totally undershot everything that it is we need to be doing. So, once again, these are the red onions. We finely minced it. The structure of the things that you actually cook is really, really important sometimes. Okay? So if we cut these onions too big, we're just going to end up with a bunch of chunks of onions that aren't actually going to contribute to the sauce. The idea for the mushrooms and onions is to contribute to the sauce, is to make up that sauce. They're going to melt in, they're going to make the whole thing really, really nice and sweet. So we don't cut it too big. We make sure to have a nice small, to a fine dice. Fine little mince there. Additionally, we have these mushrooms. The mushrooms cut, this is purely based on your individual preference. I didn't want massive pieces of mushroom. Again, I wanted this to just sort of be like chunks floating around in the sauce that we do. So we just sliced it up. These were just some basic white butter mushrooms. And we don't have that much more prep to do. Let's chop up some parsley. So, I had this leftover parsley in the fridge. Everybody, all the cooking that I do at home is all about using up leftovers. And what's really nice when you have a little something like parsley is you can use it to finish up sauces like these and use it as a garnish on dishes. This was the last of the parsley that I had at home. Okay, everybody, look at the way that I stored my parsley. This is how you should be storing your herbs at home. Here's the first thing that you're going to invest in. Everybody, I need you to invest in a salad spinner. I don't care who you are. You need a salad spinner. This is the best way to clean up any sort of leafy greens or herbs. These things dry them off in a flash. The thing that I hate most is seeing people be like, oh, it's time for a salad. And they pull out the unwashed leaves. They pull out the unwashed herbs from the fridge. They rinse it under water. And then they have the sopping wet mess. And they slap it on their cutting board and it's wet. And they're chopping through and they put in their salad and it's wet. You don't want your herbs wet. You don't want your leaves wet. Okay, so I wash these up really good because, again, parsley is oftentimes full of sand. You want to make sure that you're soaking it, rinsing it out. I like doing like 3 washes on this. We dried it off and we put it in a Tupperware with a paper towel. The paper towel is a natural humidity regulator. Okay, and what it allows us to do is essentially keep it nice and fresh in the fridge. This parsley has been in my fridge for basically 6 days, and look how vibrant it is still. Look how firm it is still. It's beautiful. Okay, the paper towel stops it from being too moist and it stops it from being too dry. If it's too moist, it's going to turn brown and mushy. If it's too dry, it's going to turn yellow. Okay, so that's what you want to do. Did everybody hear that? Does everybody understand how to keep herbs at home nice and fresh? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pluck it off the big stems because I don't like the texture of the big stems. And we can leave the small stems. Okay, it's up to you. Some people do this, some people don't. I just don't love the texture of the big stems. And we're going to be left with a bunch of this really beautiful fresh parsley. This is some of the best parsley I've had in a while, too. It's like really, really aromatic. You can really, really smell it. It's already filling up the cutting board. Okay, everybody, number 1 mistake that you can make. Everybody, we can do like a parsley or cilantro copy pasta at this point. I never chop my herbs. Gasp! How could you? What if you want it smaller? We don't chop. We slice. You know what's the difference between a chop and a slice? A chop is what you do to trees. A chop is what you do with an axe. That's when you do a vertical motion downwards. A slice is using the full extent of your blade and gently using as little downwards force as possible. The reason we do a slice and not a chop is so that we don't crush the herbs. Jack, you got it. If you chop it like this, nice and vertically, you're going to create a bunch of brown oxidized herbs that lose all of their flavor and get wet on the cutting board. Okay? So we never chop. I hate seeing people do this motion. I hate it. I cannot stand it. That's how you destroy your herbs. You can get a nice fine mince on an herb as long as you slice it. So here's what we do. We take it in our hands. We're not making juice. That's right, Noid. We're not making juice. We take our parsley. We ball it up in our hands. We ball it up. And we're not crushing it. We're not destroying it. But we're holding it nice and gently like you would a baby bird. Okay? Not so gently that it flies away, but not so firm that you're squishing all of its little baby bird brains out. This is a baby bird, and now you're going to do to it what you want to do with a baby bird. You're going to slice it up nice and thin. We're using the full length of the blade. Sorry, that got a little bit morbid. I apologize. I've never done that to birds before. So, we're just slicing it up. This is the goal of the parsley. We're not chopping. Look what I'm doing. I'm starting from the tip, and I'm going to the base. Tip to the base, tip to the base. I'm not doing this. I'm not chopping it. You can hear I'm not clunking my knife down. That's because if you do that, you're using such a small portion of your knife. You're just clunking it down, and you're crushing all of your beautiful herbs, and it's going to lose its flavor as it sits there. Family show? Well, it's nature. I know this is a family show, but that's just a part of life. You watch a nature documentary, right? And you watch a wolf eat a deer or something. This is the same thing. I'm the wolf, and that's the baby bird / deer. Let's give a little rotation. Okay? Because remember, all of the strands of parsley, they're going this way. We sliced it, they're going this way. So we give it a little rotation this way. Okay? And we take it and we use, okay, if you've ever struggled with using a grip on things like this, we use our pinky and our thumb to essentially keep it together, and our 3 other fingers in the front, the index finger, the middle finger, and the ring finger. We just sort of use the pinky and the thumb to keep it together, and then we use these other fingers just to guide the knife. And we're slicing, tip to the base, tip to the base. Really, really gently. You can see, guys, I'm not rushing this process. We're going as long as we have to do. Okay? We're going as long as we need to. We're going to take our sweet old time to just gently slice these herbs. And you know how we can tell we did a good job? I'm going to show you exactly how we can tell we did a good job. So despite the fact that we did so many passes through these herbs, take a look. It's not sticking to the bottom. They're not turning brown. They're still the very beautiful, luscious, bright green, and it's not sticking and it's not wet at the bottom. Okay? That is how you know we did a really, really good job slicing these herbs, and that's how you should be doing it too. You need a sharp knife. You need a sharp knife, and you need to not clunk it. You need to not chop it. So let's take a little bowl through this bad boy. Let's take a little bowl. Let's take this little guy. And we're just going to get it in there. And so we're going to finish the sauce with this, and then we're going to put some on top of a final dish as a garnish. Okay? Okay, beautiful. Those are sliced up parsley now. And I'm going to throw this into the dishwasher because this has done its job. The Tupperware has fulfilled its function yet again. The cycle continues. Okay, so that's going good. It's going excellent even. Everything is moving along nicely. So everybody, little recap session. We've actually done all the prep on the vegetables for the mushroom sauce. Right, so the red onions, the mushrooms, and the parsley. So, once again, I want to clarify. You want to get all of your prep done in advance unless it is something that really can't sit for extended periods of time. Before we actually go onto the heat, before we start throwing things around in pans and pots, we want to make sure that this is just done. Because it's so much easier and so much more fun to cook with. Oh, this is done, I'm going to pour this in. This is done, I'm going to pour this in. Instead of rushing back to the cutting board, chopping everything up, and then trying to rush to the pan again. Okay, it's going to be a mess. It's not going to be a very pleasant time for you. Okay, so that's been done. And we also pounded out the pork and stuff, and we'll flour it up in a little bit. I'm going to set this behind me. And one more little bit of prep that we need to do is we got to mince up some garlic. I did forget about my garlic. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to grab a little knife. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this little guy right here to put the final garlic. And this is my lovely, trusty little garlic press. Sorry, my hair is a little all over the place today. I apologize for touching it so much. So, for the garlic, let's glove up because our hands are about to get nice and sticky. And I don't like feeling the garlic on my dainty little paws. And so you can use as much or as little garlic as you want. Garlic's just going to be really nice and aromatic in the sauce, okay? And I always like opening up my garlic cloves over a bowl so that all the papery skins, they just go into the bowl and not the cutting blade instead. Okay. Let's do 3 cloves. Again, I'm not making a lot of sauce. I'm only doing enough for like 2 pork chops today. So this should be plenty. And this last one I'm going to put back into my garlic container. Okay. 3 garlic cloves, ready to go. And they've been mostly peeled up of the really dry skins. And as always, everybody, we take it, we go on a cutting board, and we take a bench scraper, and we squish it. Also, welcome on in October's brain. Hello, hello. And we squish it. And we take the next one, and guess what we do? We squish it. All right? Excellent. We take these bad boys, and we can now pop them out because we've separated the skin from the clove. Just pinch it by the top, and off it all comes. Look at that. Pinch it by the top. And is this a new knife? Not at all. No, that's a knife that I've had for a while, John. I just don't pull it out very often. We're going to trim off the bases because it's all like dried out on the bottom. Just trim those up and get rid of it. And you know what time it is, everybody? It's time for the garlic press. I was also thinking, imagine a garlic press animated emote where it was just going like that. Pretty stupid and pretty niche, but it would be funny. It'd be only you guys would make any use of it. Okay, I was just thinking about it. I'm not promising it. I was just saying it would be a funny idea. Okay, and let's get in there. Let's squish it through. Let's press it through. And let's just keep going until we're done with all 3 of our garlic cloves. The garlic community would be thriving. That's right. I don't know where else you would use that emote besides here. Also, I'm so happy to see all of you today. Everybody really came through today. Hope you're all having a good Friday. And also, does anybody have any questions in the meantime? I'm here to help you learn how to cook. We'll peel up the potatoes and then we'll do a proper recap after. Okay? And we're using this little shitty knife just to be able to scrape everything off. Okay? And we're just going to go through because there's some like chunks left over. And we're just going to pop it back in. And I'm going to quickly wash this off. This has done its job for us today. We pressed all the garlic. Everybody, I hate chopping garlic on a cutting board. Anybody who's been here, anybody who's seen the stream knows how much I hate that process because it just gets sticky and it gets unpleasant and then your cutting board is a mess after and it's super inefficient. I love garlic presses. I really do. I can't live without them at this point. Okay? Okay, come on. Out you go. Again, the easiest time to clean something like a garlic press is when it is still nice and like wet and hasn't like dried out too much. Okay, and just throwing that to my dishwasher for later. Okay. What's more kind of kick? Scallions or garlic press? It's got to be garlic press. But yes. Yeah, the finer you mince up garlic, the more intense it's going to be. And a garlic press essentially gives you the most intense form of garlic where it's fully crushed. You don't want to leave this out for too long because then it sort of loses that pungency over time. But these are the garlic cloves. Okay, that's all done. And now, my friends, the last step is going to be peeling up the potatoes. Whenever we peel potatoes, guess what? We always have a station ready to go where we will put the peeled potatoes in. This is a pot of water. It'll be in the same pot that the potatoes will boil. The reason we have this is because, as you all may know, or maybe some of you don't know, potatoes tend to oxidize. Meaning, you leave them out, you leave them exposed to oxygen, and it's going to turn brown over time. It's going to lose some of its taste, it's going to get a little bit unpleasant. So we have nice, fresh, cool water, okay, that we put the potatoes in after we peel it, because the potato peels are very natural protectant. We're not going to be doing skin on mashed potatoes, because again, I'm going through the kinds of mashed potatoes that I grew up with. I'm going through the kinds of mashed potatoes that my grandma made for me growing up. You know, I'm going through that today. So let's get that done now. I have 5 of these gold potatoes. And now the goal is just going to be to peel them up. I'm going for a very comforting, very simple mashed potato. Everybody, do you understand what we're doing today? Today is all about comfort food. Today is all about comfort food. Today, we're doing mashed potatoes and pork chops. And the idea is we're going to have this beautiful sauce, this delicious, salty, rich, fatty red wine sauce, and we're going to pour it all over the mashed potatoes. And the mashed potatoes are going to soak it up, and it's going to be amazing. Okay? And so, I don't want skins on. I want a fairly homogeneous texture for my potatoes today. So this is my potato peeler right here. And as always, we're going to take it. We're going to do the fancy peel, where we just start from the top and we're going horizontally around it. I'm using a V-neck peeler. Oop, I didn't do it quite right there. And I'm just going to go around the potato just to see, will I be able to get this all off in one piece? We're using my thumb here, my right thumb, whatever hand is holding the peeler, as my pivot. Okay. I'm using that as my pivot, and I'm going all the way through. And again, there is no benefit to doing this all at once. But it looks pretty cool when you manage to do something like that. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to stop there and then just go normally through the rest of this. It's just a bit of a fancy, thing to do to make yourself feel good about yourself. So we're getting rid of all the peels. And again, you don't really have to wash these if you peel them. We will exchange the water after we put it in though. Okay. Well, no. A roux isn't a gravy. A nameless, a roux is actually just butter and flour. You're probably thinking about a bechamel. A roux is going to be the basis for the gravy. And no, you can't really have creamy potatoes with peels because the peels will always be a little bit papery. If you wanted to make like smashed potatoes or something and get like this really, really chunky texture, you can keep the peels on. I'm just going for a fairly smoother potato texture today. Okay? So I'm just peeling this bad boy up. But, yeah, well, I'm doing mine with like red wine and stuff. So it's not really going to be like a traditional French sauce. It's going to have red wine, it's going to have a little soy sauce, it's going to have mushrooms. I don't know if there's a name for it, but it's still just going to be thickened with the roux. Okay. So this potato is peeled up. We have 4 more potatoes to go through. So let's go ahead and get that done now. I'm just going to peel these my normal way. Again, I'm just still using my thumb as the pivot and using my other hand, my non-dominant hand, to hold down the potato. Oh yeah, going through these. And we're not making a lot of mashed potatoes, we're just doing 5 potatoes worth. All of this is done, by the way, with the leftovers that I had at home that I had to get rid of. Specifically, I saw that I had potatoes in the fridge, and I saw that I had parsley in the fridge that I wanted to get rid of. At home cooking is all about just, making sure that you're not wasting anything. It's about looking at what you have and figuring out how can we make the most out of all of this. Okay? So, that potato is now peeled up. And we'll go in with the next one. And so, by the way, I have a lovely little piece of advice for all of you. If you want a mashed potato that is like really, really potatoey forward, potatoes tend to absorb some of the liquid in which whatever they cook in. Something that you can do that's really, really nice is a bit more of a classic French pomme puree. And the difference between a pomme puree and something like a mashed potato is a pomme puree is made from baked potatoes. And then you peel it up after it's baked. And I don't mean baked in like foil. I mean like actually baked and exposed in the oven. You can then like peel it up, put it through like a potato ricer, which just essentially mashes it up for you, and then mix it in with a bunch of butter. And that way you get something really, really smooth and devoid of any excess moisture. What we'll do is we'll essentially end up steam drying these a little bit so that we get rid of like any of that extra cooking liquid. Okay, 2 more potatoes left to go. Is everybody hanging in there? And then we'll chop up the potatoes. And a little bit more modern, Yes, pomme de terre puree, Moonha. Thank you. Thank you, French person, for correcting me. What is it with French people and always correcting others? Man, I should have been French. I would have been so good. I would have been so good at being French. You guys know that? Only because I would be really annoying about correcting people. Thank you, Moonha. Yes, I know. Pomme de terre, right? Apple of the earth or something. Grocery shopping here in Europe compared to the US seems so different, size-wise and frequently, resulting in way more food waste in the US. Yes, I mean, this has to do for a lot of different reasons. Dennis, we have a very, very messed up relationship with the agriculture in the United States, right? Especially in regards to the income of farmers. I mean, this has been 100 years of struggle that we're talking about here. This is not a very simple issue at all. But okay, last potato, let's peel this up. Once again, it pays well to have a nice V-neck peeler. Yes, I also grocery shop every time I want to do the streams. I never buy really, really huge things in advance. And Dennis, this has a lot to do with walkability. For the majority of the United States, people have to do their grocery trips in a car. They do their grocery trips in a car for their family or whatever, and they do it once per week or once every 2 weeks even. Okay, the reason why I'm able to not do that is because I live in New York City. I live in a very special neighborhood where I have access to a lot of very small grocery stores. That is not the reality for most of the United States, and that is a tragedy. That is a tragedy. The United States, especially the Midwest, it was designed around cars. It wasn't designed around walkability. It wasn't designed around, hey, you can carry small loads with you, because it's designed around cars. It's designed around, big bulk. You have to make those trips worth your while so that you're not doing this massive, car trip multiple times a week. And it's a tragedy. And I feel so privileged that I grew up in New York. I grew up in this part of New York too. Yeah. So that potato is now peeled up. I'm going to go ahead and toss these aside. Again, I'm not using the potato peels for anything today. You can if you would like. Okay? And now, let's go ahead and handle these potatoes, my friends. So, here's the idea. We want to make sure that we're cutting them all to be the exact same size. If they're too small, they're going to disintegrate and fall apart, and they're going to end up soaking up way too much liquid. They're going to end up soaking up way too much of that water. So, you want to make sure that all of these are cut the same size. And when we do these mashed potatoes, we make sure to start these off in cold water. Start them off in hot water. The outside will overcook by the time the inside is done. So here's what we're going to do. We have this potato here. And we're not even going to cut it in half horizontally or anything. We're just going to take a look. We're going to basically get a measure of how thick we want each potato. And we want to keep it consistent. Okay, we want to keep all of these things to be consistent. And the edge pieces will always be edge pieces at the end of the day. But you want to make sure that the width fairly stays the same. This really, really thick potato here, this one will actually have to end up chopping in half just to get it to match the width of these other ones. Okay? And again, we're just looking for them to all be exactly the same width. The closer you get, the better it's going to be at the end of the day. It's going to ensure that you have nice, even cooking. Okay, let's go ahead and get these back into my water. I have a little pot of water here, a pot of cool water. Let's go through. We have a couple more potatoes, my friends. Let's get it done. Perfect. Two more to go. Two more to go. Let's keep it up. Keep up the pace. 1, 2, 3. That's the thickness I'm going for. It's got a cool necklace today. Thank you, Serena. I have it on every time I stream that. And one last potato. Let's get it done. And yeah, this was really nice because I had this fairly old sack of potatoes in my fridge. And so this is a very nice way for me to get rid of it all. Okay, great. We have accomplished the potato peeling and the potato chopping. Everybody, are you ready for a little recap session? Is everybody ready for a recap session? Then I'll do my Patreon plug. While I put this away into my dishwasher, I'm going to wait for all of you to do that. Just to say yes, chef to me. Please and thank you. Let's get all this potato water off. Excellent. Cleaning as I go, as always. You want to make sure that whenever you start cooking, if you have a dishwasher at home, you keep that thing empty as possible. Okay. Ugh. Let's clean up my station a little bit too. I'm just going to wipe it down. Okay, great. So, we're doing two things today. We're doing a really, really simple home-style, comforting pork chops with the red wine mushroom sauce. And we're also going to be doing some mashed potatoes. And now we've accomplished all of the prep that we needed to do beforehand for them. So let's take a look at what we've gotten done so far. For the mashed potatoes, I had 5 small gold potatoes. We peeled them up. Just so that we want like a nice smooth creamy mashed potato. If you're looking for a rustic smashed potato texture, you can keep the skins, you just have to scrub them. I'm going for a bit more of a smoother mashed potato, hence I peeled them. It's all about intentions. Everybody, let me tell you something right now about cooking. There isn't such thing as a right or wrong intention. There is only right or wrong execution of that intention. So it's not correct or incorrect to have skin on your mashed potatoes. If your intention is to have skin on mashed potatoes and have that bite and that flavor and that texture, then it will be only as good as you execute based on those intentions. If you want to have smooth and creamy mashed potatoes, then we want to get the skins off. There is no such thing as what is better, skin on or skin off mashed potatoes. They're innately different. Today, I'm thinking of smooth, creamy mashed potatoes. I wanted skin off. Is that clear? There is no such thing as bad intentions in cooking, only bad execution. Okay? Execution is based on your intentions. Execution is relative to your intentions. Nothing I'm teaching you here is a recipe. So if you want smooth, creamy mashed potatoes, this is the video for you. If you want skin-on ones, I did those in the past as well. So we're keeping them in cold water so they don't oxidize. I'm going to go ahead and set that behind me. We got all of the vegetable prep done for the red wine mushroom sauce. So we had some parsley that I had in my fridge. Because guess what? I had parsley. Would I go out of my way to buy parsley for this? Maybe not. Maybe I'd buy some thyme. Maybe I'd buy some other fresh herbs. You can use whatever fresh herbs you have on hand. I had some parsley, and thus we were going to use that parsley. I wanted to buy some mushrooms because I was thinking of the bite and the chew of the mushrooms. Okay? And then we have some of this red onion, although you can use any kind of allium you want. The beauty of the allium is that it adds a sweetness to the sauce. Also, so Taiwan asks, what does oxidizing do to potatoes? So it's going to turn brown. And then it affects the texture and the taste and the color. Okay? It starts to go a little bit off in flavor, essentially like over-ripened, maybe like even a little bit tinny in flavor. But okay, so fresh parsley because that's what I had on hand and I wanted to use up my leftovers. Red onion because I have it on hand. And then we also have the mushrooms, okay? Mushrooms for a very nice meaty bite. So, we had a couple of pork chops. We had a couple of these bad boys. Get a load of these guys. These are 2 pork chops taken from the rib section. When we bought these, we went ahead and we put them on a sheet tray with a wire rack so they could air dry in the fridge. We seasoned it heavily with salt hours and hours ago. That was already like 4 hours ago that I did that. And as a result, the salt penetrated it, fully seasoned it, and it increases the moisture retention. Brining increases moisture retention. We did something called a dry brine for today. We cut off some of the connective tissue, so it'd be a little bit more tender, and then we pounded it out slightly. We're still going to be keeping it nice and thick though. Okay, not too thin, not too thick. You can see this thickness, whatever this is at the end of the day. We're going to blot these dry and we're going to go ahead and cover these with some flour by the end of it. Okay, that was all the prep that we really needed to do. One more thing I'm going to quickly do. In this saucepan, I'm going to add my milk and my cream for my mashed potatoes. I really don't want to have cold milk and cold cream going into mashed potatoes. You can. Also, thank you, Conquer757 for the sub. Really appreciate it. I don't want to do cold milk and I don't want to do cold cream in my mashed potatoes. The reason for this is because it's going to cool down the mashed potatoes. If you've ever made potatoes, you'll know when you take them out how quickly they cool down. So, we're going to make sure that we're heating it up in advance. Now, am I measuring the amount of milk that I'll be using for today? Absolutely not. I don't know how much I'll need. I'm just going to eyeball it. Oh, you need exactly half a cup of milk. I have no idea how much milk I need. I have no idea. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pour a glug and a half of milk. Okay? Actually, you know, maybe a quarter more glug. Okay? And we have some heavy cream here. Okay? I haven't opened it up yet. And I dropped the cap immediately on the floor because of course I did. So again, this step is completely optional, but the reason why I'm doing this is because if we don't, we'll add a bunch of cold liquid into the mashed potato and it'll go cold a lot quicker. And mashed potatoes don't reheat particularly well. So by having these just by having these and having them heated up in advance, it's going to allow us to not cool it down. So that much cream. I don't know how much cream that is. Again, I'm eyeballing. And then we're going to have some butter for extra fattiness and extra richness. Okay? Some people, you know, you can do your mashed potatoes based solely on butter. You know, growing up, we didn't really do like French-style mashed potatoes that way. That's a little bit more of a contemporary method. I'm adding like a couple of tablespoons of butter in here. You see sometimes people do like half a stick of butter or something. That's not the kind of mashed potatoes I'm going for. I'm not going for like a pomme puree. I'm going for something like this. So, this is a glug of milk, this is a little bit of cream, and this is a little bit of butter. I didn't really measure out any of this. Okay, and that we're going to set aside. We're not going to heat that up yet. But when we do, it's going to get added into the mashed potato for us today. Is that clear? Okay. The butter is there for the richness, the cream is there for the creaminess, and the milk is there for the general viscosity. Some people do cream and butter and all of that. And we might not use all of this. We might not use all this too. So I intentionally, you know, we can overshoot a little bit, but we don't feel compelled to add all of this. We'll mash it in Okay, we'll mash it in, and then we'll compensate and adjust for the texture that we want at the end of the day. Because I don't really believe in cooking by ratios like that. The amount of liquid that your potatoes end up absorbing over the boiling process is dependent on the potato. It depends on how starchy it is. It depends on how long you've also boiled it. As a result, the amount of liquid that we add to the potatoes is always going to be a little bit variable. So that's why we did this, and we're not going to necessarily use all this. We'll just play it by ear. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside behind me. That's been measured out. That's been done, skis. Gamers, is it time? Is it time for the great cooking process to begin? Okay, so let's think about the timing of everything. We have some potatoes. The thing we need to do for the potatoes is we need to bring it up to a boil. We started off in cold water, and we always simmer my potatoes. I never boil my potatoes. We bring it up to a boil, drop to a simmer, and we simmer it. We simmer it for 15 minutes or so until it's fork tender. We don't want the potatoes to be crumbling and falling apart completely. Okay? So that's going to take, it's going to take about 5 minutes to come to a boil, 10 to 15 minutes for it to get cooked through. For the pork chops, we need to sear the pork chops after we dust in some flour. We need to then, what else do we need to do after that? When you take them off, we need to add in the mushrooms. We need to add in a little bit of water. We need to add in the onions. We need to glaze it with the wine. Okay? It's gonna be a process. Today is gonna be a process. Wow. We have a lot to get done. So I think I'm going to actually start by putting my potatoes and my pork chops on the heat simultaneously. Is that gonna be the best way to do it? Yes, it is. Okay, so also really quickly, everybody, if you haven't already done so, please check out my Patreon. You can type in !Patreon in the chat. Any sort of little bit that helps. I'm trying to subsidize the grocery costs of these streams. And so, if you're able to help, that'll be great, because I want to keep this information free. I want to continue to teach you all how to cook for free. I want to keep this accessible for everybody as much as possible. And so if you have the money to be able to do that, to be able to support, it would be really appreciated, but you're not obligated to by any means. So one thing we're going to do really quickly though, we're going to take a pot of water with the potatoes. I'm going to exchange the water really quickly, just because this water is like a little bit dirty still, has some of the excess free-floating starch. I'm just going to exchange it. You don't have to do that. It's just a nice thing to do. It doesn't really do much at the end of the day. You're going to fill it up with water. You want to make sure that all of your potatoes are nicely covered. The last thing that you want is to have potatoes that, when some of the water evaporates, that some of the potatoes are exposed, because it won't cook evenly. And now what you need to do is to season this with a bunch of salt. So I want to explain to you the function of this. People say you can't season mashed potatoes after it's cooked, and it's actually kind of true. It's actually kind of true. The reason for this is because after the mashed potatoes are cooked and actually properly mashed, and you want to adjust the amount of salt in it, a lot of the salt is going to stick to the first thing that it touches. And mashed potatoes are really, really thick. Okay? Mashed potatoes are super thick. And salt is quite granular. It's going to stick and dissolve the first thing that it touches. In order to fully incorporate the salt after it's actually mashed, okay, it's going to take so much mixing that you could end up with an overly gluey, overly mixed, overly starchy potato. So, you need to remember this. When we strain off these potatoes, a lot of the salt that we add in the water is going to go away. We need a very salty water because we just need some of that salt to penetrate the potato itself. I mean the same way that you would do pasta. I mean big pinches. Big pinches. This is a big pinch household. Is that clear? Do I have your attention? Do you understand? We're talking big pinches of salt. I'm talking something like this. And again, don't worry about it. Most of it is going to dissolve away in the water and get drained off anyways. So we need to compensate for that, because not all of it actually ends up going onto the potato. Okay. I'm going to the stove. And I'm going to set this aside to this one, because this burner is where we'll be doing the pork chops. I'm going to actually not use this pan. I'll be doing a slightly bigger one. I'm going to be turning on the heat. The idea is to bring it to a boil, drop to a simmer, and cook it for a given amount of time. Okay, and that amount of time is going to be, in total 12, 15 minutes. We're just going to keep testing it. We don't want the potato to fall apart, and we don't want it to be raw and crunchy on the inside. So we're just going to aim for a nice little sweet spot. Okay. This pan I'm going to exchange. It's not big enough. We're going to go to my other saute pan, my Mavier pan. So take a look at this bad boy. This is my clad pan. This is a clad stainless steel pan. You can't heat it up empty. You cannot heat it up empty, okay? So, I'm gonna turn on the heat off the camera because my camera glitches out whenever I turn on the stove. Okay? Clad pans, you really don't want to blast them with heat. Everybody, be nice. Ooh, wrong shot, excuse me. Be nice and patient when you're heating up your stainless steel. We don't blast it with heat, otherwise we're going to get a bunch of hot spots and cool spots. Because this is a clad pan, this is a clad Mavier pan, it has aluminum on the inside to help make it really, really nice and even. So here's what we're going to do. I have some of this beautiful chicken fat. We have some of this chicken fat that's hopefully devoid of liquid. We're going to add that in, and we're heating this up on a low to medium. I want to clarify that once again. I want to heat it up slowly so that we get a very, very nice, even heat on the whole thing. It might end up popping a little bit because I didn't like completely process my chicken fat. I didn't get rid of like all the liquid from it, so some of that water may end up popping. John, I wouldn't agree. In fact, I think if you're experiencing that, John, you might want to consider a little bit of baking soda in your water because that'll cause them to crumble more. But I've never really experienced that. So again, I want a generous amount of fat here, okay? And we're going to be flouring the pork chops. We're not going to be giving them a hard, heavy sear. The reason I want to flour them is because I want some of that flour to sort of stick to the bottom and dissolve and help thicken the sauce later on. And because we're looking to essentially gently cook the meat on the inside. I don't want to overcook the meat on the outside. Whenever you give something like a really hard, heavy sear, you run the risk of the outside overcooking by the time that the inside is done. And the flour really helps to, it's like a very nice natural like medium, right? It's like why fried chicken can be like so like moist. It's a very similar idea. But we're not doing like a heavy breading or anything. We're just going to be dusting this nicely with flour. Okay. So, this is our lovely pork chops once again. We don't need to blot it dry. Again, I'm looking at it now. You know what? We'll just blot it dry just to be safe. Just to get rid of any of the excess liquid on it. Take our tongs, pat them up, but I think they look, yeah, they're fine. Okay? And again, these have been fully brined with salt. I know it doesn't look like we have any seasoning. I'm going through very delicate flavors today. We'll have some black pepper later on. We'll have some herbs. We'll have some sauces. But I'm not heavily seasoning these pork chops because I want my flour to evenly stick throughout. Okay? It's a very, very intentional choice that I'm doing here. So, you can hear I don't know if you can hear it actually, my oil is popping very slightly, my chicken fat is popping slightly. That's just because, again, it has some water in it still. It wasn't like perfectly rendered or anything. And the chicken fat's going to be a really, really tasty addition. It's all going to go into the sauce at the end of the day. I have some flour, and we're gonna dust it with the flour. Again, it's not going to be really heavily seasoned or anything. The sauce is going to do a lot of the work for the pork chops today. In fact, what we can do to even get like an even dusting on it, I have this little teeny tiny mesh strainer here. This little guy right here. And this is basically going to help us to distribute the flour all over the pork. Okay? And having it on a wire rack is also nice if you like don't want it to like get on your plate and stuff. Right? So all we're going to do is we're going to dump it in. And we're going to dust up our pork. In fact, we should be using the spoon to just help push it through. This is some basic all-purpose flour, and we'll shake off any of the excess and stuff. And we'll pat it in, okay? Going from nice and high up, just so that we can get a nice even covering. You can just do this on a plate with some flour if you would like. I just really like doing it with this method, because it helps us to get like a very nice even distribution. I'm not going to be using my tongs to pick these up anymore because they're quite fragile and delicate, and you'll break that flour coating that we just developed on it. Again, I'm just being very careful, I'm being very gentle, I'm being very delicate with this process. Do I use cast iron pans? I do not. I have a carbon steel pan. I don't own any cast irons. And that is a little bit unfortunate. I do wish I did. Okay, and I can smell that that beautiful chicken fat is heating up really, really nicely. We're not looking for it to be like super hot. All you want to do is just set like that flour on the outside a little bit. Okay, and we're going to take it and we're going to shake off any of the excess, great, because we have a lot of the excess. I might have put it on a little too much. That's why having this on a wire rack is really nice. Okay, just pat it in. And again, having it like not be like too wet or anything is just going to really, really help us to make sure that all that flour sticks nicely. All right, let's go ahead and get one last spoonful of flour in. Again, we're wasting a little, oh wait, I didn't flip it over. I forgot to flip it over. Oh no. All right, there we go. Much better. Again, nice and high up, and you're going to get a very nice even coating on this. I'm putting a lot of effort into this. I'm putting in a lot more effort than I feel like you need to. And we could even just shake this off on top of another one, and we're just going to pat it in. Pat it in. You don't want to break your coating or anything. And we're not doing the breading. We're not doing any egg. We're not doing any breadcrumbs. We're not doing anything crazy like that. All we want to do is just get some nice color on these pork chops. And we'll pull them off, and we'll go on with the rest of it. Look at that. Okay, nicely floured up, gently floured up, right? Not too thick of a coating, not so much that's going to completely fall off and all over the place. Okay, I'm going to now get ready to put these bad boys onto the stove. So my oil is heated up nicely. I'm getting some slight smoking on it. Hopefully it doesn't pop in my face as soon as I distribute it. We do want to distribute the oil like, remember when I said hopefully it doesn't pop in my face? It did exactly that, again, because it has a little bit of water in there. We've been heating it up pretty slowly. The oil is getting to the point that I want. Okay. It's shimmering nicely. And now we're just going to lay these in. We're just going to lay them in. Not super hot. We're not searing this thing to death. It's a very, very gentle, gentle sizzle at the moment. And next one going in. And again, I'm using my hands so as not to really break that flour coating too much. Excellent. There it is. We're not going to get crispy pork by the end of it. They're going to finish cooking in the sauce that we do. We just want to set that flour on the outside a little bit and get a little bit of that browning developed. Okay, is that clear? Do you all understand? We're still going to need this flour later on. I'm going to set some aside in a bowl. And the reason we need it later on is because we're going to need some to actually thicken the sauce. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and spoon some in. That's just going to be for later. How's my potatoes doing? Are we boiling yet? We're not even close to boiling yet. Sweet. Guys, this is cozy, simple, easy home cooking today. We're not doing anything fancy. We're not doing anything crazy. But do you see how much intentionality and how much love we're giving every single component here? We're not just throwing things around. We're not messing around today. We're being gentle. We're being delicate. We're doing everything that we need to do. We're going to have tasty, tender pork chops. These are going to be in a very similar style to the way that a lot of you grew up with, except we're just really paying attention to the technique. I love smothered pork chops. I hate that the contemporary trend is to always do seared pork chops like a steak. I love the idea of a smothered pork chop in sauce, and that's what we're essentially doing. We're doing like a red wine gravy, like a red wine sauce. That's exactly the ideal that I'm going for. Okay? I'm going to just put some stuff into my dishwasher. Really, really quickly. Ugh. Excellent. That has now been done. Okay. Yeah, we're not over breading it. We're not going for like a fried cutlet thing on the outside or anything. Right? We're just keeping it simple. The flour coating is so that we don't like aggressively sear the meat or anything. That's not what I'm going for. That's not my intention today. Not everything has to be a really, really aggressive sear, my friends. We're just going to get some good color developed, and then we'll take it off. I'm rotating it to just get it on some more of the hot parts of the pan. Okay. And let's go ahead and get that transferred over. Gorgeous. Pork chops are going, my friends. Okay, in fact, I don't even think I need my waste bowl anymore. I can just put that into my dishwasher. We're making good time today. We're keeping things easy. We're keeping things simple, okay? We're just doing basic home food today. We're making comfort food. Right? Isn't it comforting? I think it's comforting too. It's just going. We're going to get some good color on it. Again, we don't want to completely cook it at this stage. We're going to finish cooking it in the sauce later on. We're just moving it around to make sure that we're not on any cold spots, and we're distributing the fat all over again. This is a very very European way of cooking something, right? You flour up a little bit of meat, and you cook it, and you keep it nice and gentle. Now, I will say, there is a really huge misconception. I see people all the time, they say, flour helps to get good browning on a steak, or cornstarch helps to get a good crust. Not really. Because it's not like the meat under it is getting a crust. Maybe like some of the parts where it's exposed. The parts that are getting a crust is just the flour on the outside. It's just the breading on the outside. Okay? So people say, oh, you're getting a really good siri this way by putting cornstarch on it. That's not true at all. You're getting a siri on the cornstarch, not on the meat itself. Are you the best chef because you're Dara? You're Dara because you're the best chef. I am the best chef, Moonha, not because I'm Dara, but because nobody tries quite like I do. Nobody tries quite like me. And I want to teach people because I have intention. It's because I have philosophy and I have theory and I have intention. Because I want to change the landscape of food. I want to change the way that people cook at home. So, we've moved it around a little bit. Let's take a little peek. That's perfect. I don't want too much color. Again, we're going to finish cooking it in the sauce later on. Okay? So just take it, distribute the oil, make sure it's nicely and under the flour. Right? We're just getting some really, really simple color on this. Let's move it over there. Let's do that. Again, we didn't heavily, bread it with flour or anything. We didn't slam it with heat or anything. We're being nice and gentle. We're being nice and delicate with the protein. So, again, everybody, when you have meat, you need to think about it like a sponge. When the more you heat it up, the more you're basically scrunching that sponge and the more liquid it's going to end up releasing. A lot of people these days, they cook their pork chops like a steak. They cook it purely to like 130, keeping it medium rare on the inside. If you ever grew up eating tough pork chops, they were probably cooked to around 160. But there is a completely different style of pork chops that you can do. The braised pork chop. Let's say you have like a really thin pork chop or something and you give a good sear on it. And you finish cooking it in the sauce for like 50 minutes. That pork is going to get so tender that it then becomes essentially a braised piece of meat. The worst thing that you can do is keep that pork in the window between 160 and 170. It's going to be tough and it's going to be dry. That is the worst thing that you can do. So either cook it like a steak, meaning between 135 to 145, like I'd want 140 in total, I'm not going to measure. Or go the complete other direction and cook it for a very long time until it gets really nice and tender. The worst thing that you can do is cook it to 165. Okay? That's how you get tough, that's how you get dry pork. And it's unpleasant and not good for anybody. So, my potatoes are boiling. I'm going to drop that whole thing to a simmer now. Really, really drop the heat. And I want to gently cook my potatoes. And I'm setting the timer for 14 minutes. That's when we'll poke it. Everybody, we don't use high heat when we cook potatoes like this because we don't want the outside to overcook. We simmer it. We poach it. We don't boil it. So, let's take a look. Again, the crust on this side, not looking amazing. Some of the flour probably ended up getting a little bit too humid, and that's totally okay. That's totally fine. We're just moving it around slightly. We're putting it on the hot zones after it was on the cool zone for a little bit. You can smell the toasted flour now. The pork is getting really nicely cooked. Okay. So again, we're just finishing up the soup. The pan is on like a medium. It's on a medium, but it's just been heating up for a while, Allie. And now we're just going to get a plate ready to take these off on. The smell is lovely. It smells like searing pork. It smells like searing meat. It's always going to buck a little bit. You'll always get some blind spots when it's a cut of meat this thin. If it's like a really thick pork chop, you can put like a press on it. That will help to get like a nice even sear on it. But otherwise, it's kind of inevitable for us to do that. So again, we're not cooking it through all the way. It's still going to be pretty raw on the inside. We're going to finish cooking it in the sauce really, really gently. Okay? That is about where I would stop. This is where I would stop. I don't want to cook it through all the way at this stage. I'm just going to take these guys out now. And we're going to let it rest. So, we have this pan. We have all of this fat. I'm going to take out this fat now. Yes, Allie, because they were cooked too high. They weren't cooked not long enough for them to braise, but they weren't cooked short enough for them to be like nice and medium on the inside or anything. So here's what we're going to do. The pan is still on the heat. The pan is still on the stove. All we're going to do is I'm going to take this fat and I'm going to go ahead and pour this off into a separate container. I don't need this fat right now because now we're going into the boiling stage of the mushrooms. This is what I love doing with mushrooms. This is a bit of a modern mushroom cooking approach that we're doing here. We're going to add the mushrooms into this hot, dry pan. We're adding the mushrooms, and then we're going to do something crazy. We're going to do something radical. You ready for this? You ready for this? We're going to take some water now. We're going to take this water, and we're going to pour it in. Because the goal is to collapse the mushrooms. If you add mushrooms into hot fat, it's going to soak up all of the fat. And then your pan is going to be dry, and then it's still going to cook in liquid. So what we do is we get the mushrooms to a very stable texture. We're essentially deglazing the pan simultaneously, but that's not the main goal. The goal is the steam is going to help collapse the mushrooms. Once the mushrooms are collapsed, they're going to release a bunch of their own liquid. They're going to soak some of it up, and then we're going to evaporate the remaining liquid. So make sure that your mushrooms are nice and flat on the pan. We're nice and flat. Don't worry about seasoning yet. We'll get to the seasoning. Once again, it's going to release some water. It's going to soak some up once it collapses. We're going to evaporate all the water, and then we'll go in with the rest of the fat. Is that clear? Does everybody understand? And that way we'll be able to get properly sauteed mushrooms. Otherwise, they just soak up fat, and it's a mess and a headache. Okay? So, this is just going. It's going to take a second for it to collapse. You can see that the pan is getting almost progressively wetter. And we're using this water at the same time to effectively deglaze. Okay. I'm going to take my kettle. We could use a splash of water extra for now. Because some of the pan's getting a little dry, but it's okay. And this is nicer to do like in a wider pan where you can get like some more water in there and stuff. It's going to collapse. It's going to happen. It's getting to the collapsing stage. Right? This pan is getting super, super wet. Just trust the process. I'm going to put these tongs away because I don't really need them right now. Put away that plate. And all while this is happening, remember, I have this little saucepan of butter, cream, and milk. Right? We never want to actually like slam that with heat or anything. This is going to be for the mashed potatoes when it's ready. So when the mashed potatoes are about 5 minutes away, we'll do it. Allie, I am completely self-taught. I've been cooking for the majority of my life. Also, is this shot too dark? Do you guys want more light on this? I can't really tell, so I need your input. We're just going to try to flip these mushrooms over. You can see like the tops of them are like still raw. So we're just going to move these around a little bit. Would you guys like some more light on the mushrooms? It'll be good. And yeah, it is hot water. It doesn't really matter. Again, you'll see what happens. It's going to take a few minutes. Moonhut, not necessarily. It's about a game of understanding. It is about a game of theory. Everything that I'm doing here, I'm trying to teach you all how to do maybe a tiny bit more light. We can do that. Get a load of this guy. How's that? Is that too much light? Is that too much? I can't tell. I don't know if it is. You can just tell me. It's 2030, that's right. But yes. Oh my God. Some people are saying that's good. Some people are saying that's a bit too much. Guys, we'll figure out our lighting one day. I'm going to figure out like a different lighting setup for the stove shot because I want to give you guys the best product possible. I want you all to have something that you like looking at. This is the brightest setting. This is I'm using my microwave lighting. Okay, this water is evaporating a little bit too quickly right now. We're just going to distribute it. Again, my pan is just like kind of tilted off to the side. It's kind of annoying, but that's okay. Just clean it off and keep it going. Again, we're looking to collapse all of the mushrooms. We're looking to evaporate all of that liquid. Okay, we're looking for it to release all of its water, and then we'll be able to hit the sauteing stage. This pan is a little too wide for this amount of mushrooms. It's a little bit too wide. But yes, yeah, mushrooms are really, really complex. Disco ball lighting in the future? Yeah, sure. Got you. I got you, keepers. Again, just move it around. Make sure nothing is burning or sticking to the bottom. It'll get there. Just be patient. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, but really, it's nicer to have like a slightly smaller vessel where you can put in more water, just to make sure that all the mushrooms get like evenly cooked this way. But it'll be fine. It'll be okay. Evaporate that liquid, and then we'll hit it with the fat. It'll be perfect. Evaporate the liquid, we'll hit it with the rest of the chicken fat. We'll add in the onions. We'll fry that up all together. We'll add in more fat. We'll add in flour, and it'll be perfect. We'll have some really, really beautiful food this way. What's going on with my potatoes? Let's take a little peek on the potatoes. So they've been simmering away this whole time, not aggressively boiling, although I can definitely turn down that heat. I'm going to take a knife, and I'm just going to pierce it with a knife. I can definitely feel like it's super, super firm on the inside still. Yeah, it's super firm on the inside still, so that's going to take at least another 3 minutes at this stage, at this juncture. But now we can heat up, remember, I set aside that cream, that milk. It seems like a Julia Child line. Sure, I guess. Yeah. Oh yeah, these mushrooms are going, okay? Okay, we're going to get a milk, a cream, and a butter onto a low heat. Low heat. I don't want you to boil it. I just want you to slap a lid on it, and we're going to just have it on a low heat, and we're going to stir it every so often, okay? But again, yes, I never do aggressive boils on my potatoes because I want to get them evenly cooked through, okay? Low simmer is what I like, basically poaching it. Whenever you have something thin, here's the idea, guys. If you don't want something to get overcooked and it's thin and you want it to be crunchy, you boil it. That's your rule of thumb. Think of shrimp, think of leafy greens. You do boil water into ice water. If you have something that needs to get fully cooked through all the way to the inside, we poach it, meaning we do it in warm to hot water. So Ali, there's times that you want to use boiling water and there's times you want to use slightly colder water. Yes, exactly a nameless. Poached chicken. When we did the chicken rice, I talked about how we need to make sure that our chicken water, where we cook it, like we made like this beautiful broth, we don't ever boil it. It's just below a simmer and it gently comes up to temperature. And that way you get really evenly cooked meat without the outside being overcooked. Okay, so guess what? The pan is drying up now. It's almost there. It's almost exactly where I want it to be. We have a bunch of like this mushroom fond that came out of the water. We have some of the stuck flour from the pork as well, simultaneously. I'm going to just try the pork and see how it is. Yeah, I tried an edge of it. Oh, it's good. It's not going to need much cooking in the sauce. Okay, and now guess what? The pan is dry. We can tell because the mushrooms have begun to slightly stick. The pan is dry and they've fully collapsed in their texture. So here's what we do. Remember the chicken fat that we set aside? This little bit of chicken fat that we had left over? It's going in now. We don't have a lot of it. We're going to use what we have. Then we're going to use some butter. We have some gorgeous butter. We're going to throw that in too. I don't know how much butter this is. I'm using a healthy amount of butter here. Okay? I want to fry my mushrooms now. We're adding in the butter. We added in the chicken fat again. And now, because they've collapsed, the mushrooms will not absorb this butter. Okay? We can turn up the heat on the pan. We can get our mushrooms distributed and they'll be sizzling away in a moment. It's going. Sweet. Beautiful. Look at that. Excellent. Okay, while this is going, we want to now also do the onions at the same time as the mushroom. This pan is not going to get overcrowded. This is the advantage of having a nice big pan like this. We're adding in a quarter diced red onion at this stage. And we're going to hit the whole thing now with a bunch of salt. And we're going to basically saute this bad boy. Bunch of salt going in, because that's going to be the base flavor for this. And we're going to go ahead and inspect my potatoes. Again, I'm looking for my knife to just easily sink through them. We're not boiling them, we're not simmering them, we're just below all of that. Ooh, my potatoes are almost there. In fact, I think the last 3 minutes of cooking is going to be perfect for them. This is heating up nicely. Excellent. Look at this. The mushrooms, the onions, the butter, all of it has come together with the salt now. It smells wonderful. We're looking for some good caramelization now, my friends. We're looking to get some good color developed on these. The onions, we cut them up nice and fine. We can use any allium we want. So it's going to sweeten up that sauce. What salt do you use? Dennis, I use... What do I use? I use kosher salt. I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. The reason I use kosher salt is because I can easily pick it up with my fingers. Okay? Easily pick it up with my fingers. That's the benefit of it. That's the beauty of it. Always use kosher salt. Table salt, I mean, unless you're doing like baking or like volume or like mass stuff, I never really felt the need for it before. Oh yeah, all right. This is getting a little bit of color now. We're just letting this go, we're letting this do its thing. We're making sure to scrape up the bottom if there's any like stuck brown bits. And so, the order of operations is this. I think we're going to do the flour first. We're going to spoon in the flour, we're going to add some red wine. We're going to reduce the wine. We're going to get that pan basically nice and dry. And then we're going to go in with some water just to be able to build the rest of the base of it. And it's going to be great. Water, we can use chicken stock or beef stock if you have some. I don't have any on hand at the moment, although I really recommend that you do. And it'll be good. It'll be good. Again, I'm just making sure that my milk, my cream, it's not hot. Well, it's not too cold rather. So this is going, get the onions, the mushrooms, it's all frying up nicely. This is going to be the base of the sauce. Okay, this is the stage where things can start to burn. So we're just moving things around a little bit. Excellent. And guess what? My potatoes are done. I'm going to strain these off and I'm going to steam dry them. I'm going to steam dry them over my colander. Okay? That's going to help to make sure that any of the excess liquid does end up evaporating. And then we'll put them back into the pot and make the mashed potatoes. So, there it is. That's my colander. Actually, am I just going to do this over the strainer? No, I'm going to pour this into a colander to make my life easier. I'm pouring this into a colander, and I'm just going to show you guys the steaming potatoes as it goes. Steam didn't hit my hands. This pot's going to dry off now. It's going to be great. We're scraping the stuff up. It's getting a little bit sticky at the bottom. It's starting to get a little bit sticky. Okay? So just make sure you're scraping it off. You can see it's taking on all of this really beautiful color. Everything is getting really nice and tender. Let's get some black pepper in here while we got it. And now I do have actually a very critical question, and it is, do I do flour first or wine first? I think I'm going to do flour first, so I get some time to toast the flour a little bit. Yeah, we're going to do flour first and then thicken it with the wine. Adding in the black pepper, get it all nice and aromatic. And then it's going to be the garlic and the flour. Right, and this is the base of the sauce. We're going to get a really delicious sauce. My potatoes are currently steaming away in my colander. That's just to get rid of any of the excess liquid. You can't see it right now, but again, really important. We don't want any of the water. We want to get as much butter, as much milk into the deal as possible. Okay, it's looking good. I can even turn down that heat more. Just because, again, I don't want it to scald. I don't want to burn my milk. I'm going to keep stirring this up. Okay, the black pepper is fried. The onions have fried. The mushrooms have gotten some color. We browned up the butter a little bit too. We're going to add in our garlic. We're adding in the garlic. Okay, the garlic we add in last so this doesn't burn. Okay, this is the part that can burn the easiest. So we add it in last after the onions, after the mushrooms, after the black pepper. And we're just going to cook this for like 30 seconds. It's getting really nice and aromatic now. Just a little bit, not too long. And now we go in with the flour, my friends. Again, am I measuring the amount of flour? Not really. I'm just going to do a couple of rough teaspoons of this stuff. And this is how we get a nice thick sauce. So one, maybe a little bit more than that, and that should be good. I'm just going by eye. I'm just feeling this out. Roughly, you want volumetrically the same amount of butter as flour, but you can play with that ratio as much as you want. And we're going to get a bunch of stuck flour on the bottom. Don't worry about it. Just make sure you're scraping this up. Make sure you're moving it along. Okay. And now, before the flour that's stuck on the bottom burns, we're going to take a couple of big lugs of red wine. And in it goes. And now we have to stir this up. Stir it all up. And it's time for us to reduce the wine, my friends. Stir it up, scrape up anything that's on the bottom, scrape up and mix around your vegetables, your onions, your mushrooms, your garlic, to make sure that all the flour is dissolving into the wine. And you can already see it's getting a little bit glossy, it's getting a little bit thick from the flour already. We need to cook out the raw taste in the flour, and we need to scrape up anything that's stuck to the bottom because that's all of the flavor of the sauce today. And now we're going to reduce this in volume. So keep stirring, keep mixing. So, everybody get that so far? That was a big glug of wine, Ali. I have no idea how many glugs of wine that was. Everybody get that so far? I want to hear the yes chef, please, and thank you. So again, the flour is super, super functional here. It's what's going to give us a really, really delicious, thick sauce. The wine is going to give us the acidity. It's going to give us some sweetness. The onions give this whole thing a lot of sweetness too. It looks a lot thicker than it will be at the end right now. That's mostly because of the concentration of flour. We essentially want to reduce this wine. We want to evaporate the alcohol. And then we're going to add in some water. And while we're at it, we're going to do a splash of soy sauce. A splash. There's a bit of a secret ingredient, right? It's going to give it some more oomph. It's going to give it a little bit more taste. Just one of those. One little glug of, dark soy sauce I had. Into the good wine it all goes. And we're scraping this up as we go. We're making sure we don't have any dried out sections on any edge of this. Beautiful. So just keep it cooking, keep it reducing, and we're going to thin this out with water in a moment's time. This is basically like really, really thick, really seasoned red wine at the moment. Is it possible to do something similar without alcohol? Yeah, you can just do some vinegar. And yes, you don't have to do a lot of soy sauce. You're not going to taste the soy sauce. It's just going to give the whole thing a little bit of extra meatiness, especially because we're not doing this with a stock today. Okay, so just keep this going. Again, we're basically going to reduce this into a paste, and I'm going to have my kettle of water ready to pour in. Things move fast now. Oh, by the way, in the meantime, my potatoes have finished steaming. I'm just going to put them into my pot. I'm not ready to mash them. So I'm just going to put them in my pot and put a lid on it. And yes, you can absolutely do Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire would be lovely. Keep it mixing, keep it moving. You don't want to leave this thing to be too still for too long. Otherwise, the flour can scorch and become quite unpleasant at the bottom. Okay, we've hit this stage of the operation. It's time to now dilute it with water until we get the viscosity of sauce that we want and all in. And again, if it's ever too thin, we can always evaporate it more to thin it out. We just want to make sure that we're cooking this down properly. Okay, just dissolve all of the flour, dissolve all of the wine into the water, turn up your heat. Just really, really get in there, my friends. I do truly mean get in there. We can use a silicone spatula to make our lives a little bit easier. It's really going to help dissolve everything. Excellent. And again, it looks a little bit too thin right now. We're just going to bring this up to a boil and reduce it until we get the texture we want. We'll also add a little bit of cream at the end for some richness. Already it's pretty delicious. Excellent. Okay. Everybody following along so far? I know things are moving fast now, but we're getting it done. We're making it happen. Ooh, that's too much reflection. Okay, too much reflection. So, we're just going to be stirring this occasionally and bringing it up to a boil, adding in some cream, and then we'll finish the pork chops in there. Okay? I know it looks a little too thin now. It will happen. I promise. Just break up all the clumps of flour, break it up, get it involved, get it a part of the program. Okay. While that's going, who's ready to make some mashed potatoes? Everybody ready for some mashed potatoes? All right, let's get started. So let's set up a station. Let's set up the potato station. We're going to get a towel on. Okay, towel, board, because I don't want to put hot things on this directly, because it kind of tends to buckle. This is my pot of potatoes. And then behind me, I have my cream and my milk. Okay, here we go. My beautifully boiled and pre-seasoned Yukon Gold potatoes. I'm going to just still stir up my sauce that I'm building here because, again, I don't want it to squelch on the bottom. Just scrape it up, stir it around, and we're going to go ahead and boil this away. All right. Everybody, I have a mixture of cream, I have a mixture of milk, and I have a mixture of butter. All in here. We're going to just start by ladling a little bit in at a time. If we need to add more later, we'll add more. So we're gonna go with 2 ladles for now. We heat it up so that we don't cool down the mashed potatoes too much. And I'm gonna take this potato masher. You can use a potato ricer if you'd really like to. And we're getting in there and we're mashing the whole thing up. There we go. And again, I don't like seasoning it at the end because it tends to only stick to like one part of the potato. So we're mashing it up and we're going to get the viscosity that we want. You can't take away liquid, but you can always add more. So if you ever feel like this is too dry, we can always add more liquid, my friends. And we're mashing it up. Dennis, this is a stainless steel kitchen table. It's like the kind they use in restaurants. I got this many years ago. I got this like 7, 8 years ago. When I first started to shoot food content, I would try to do some like cooking instruction videos at home. I bought this table and that project never became anything. It was a very bad project. I was a much worse cook when I was, 8 years ago. I was 13 years old. I'm 21. So that wasn't particularly successful. All right, so we're mixing up the sauce. Again, we're keeping it going. We're going to need some more liquid. We're going to need some more of the milk, some more of the cream, some more of the butter. And we're just putting it in. As thin or as thick as you would like. This is completely and utterly up to you, my friends. This is your preference. This is your mashed potato. But we don't add it in all at once. And it's hot, so it's not cooling down the potatoes at all. It's not getting too gloopy. Okay, we're mashing it, we're processing it, we're getting rid of any of the lumps that we don't want. And you can go as fine or as thick as you would like. This is up to you. This is your mashed potato. I want mine to be the kind that I ate growing up. So that's the texture I'm going for. A little bit of cream, a little bit of milk, a little bit of butter. It'll be great. You can add more butter if you want it to be really rich. You can add more cream if you want more creaminess. Milk for it to be a little bit lighter. Mix it up and keep mashing. All right. This is still a little too thick for me. I'm going to, again, mix up my sauce. We're not leaving Mr. Sauce alone for too long. Okay, we want to keep him nice and attended. We want to make sure that he feels taken care of by us. We're going to add another spoonful of our milk, of our cream. Actually, we might just end up adding. We'll do this ladle and then we'll see how we feel. We might end up adding all of it. Again, the texture, it's up to you. If you add cold milk, it's actually going to thicken it. Because starches thicken when they're cold. Okay? That's right, you can go to my YouTube. You can follow Tarina's advice. Does anybody have any questions so far? I know I was juggling a lot just now. It's just that things happened all at once. Best non-dairy subs? Honestly, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask about that. You can do like olive oil smashed potatoes with like the skin on still. Those are always really, really lovely. Okay, that's a little bit more of the texture that I'm going for. Let's give this whole thing a little taste. That's so good. Guys, that is wonderful. And again, I'm still stirring my sauce. We're not forgetting about it. We're just gently reducing the liquid. We can see the bubbles start to burst up on the outside of it. We're just scraping up the bottom gently as we go. Okay. That's excellent. That's perfect. I'm just going to mash it up a little bit more because there's some pieces in there that I still don't want. That's perfect. It doesn't need any more salt. No, that is perfect. That's exactly what I want on these mashed potatoes. Because this mashed potato, we don't want this to be too rich because it's going to be drowned in that sauce that we're making right now. If we added too much butter now, the potatoes will be great, but then the whole dish is going to actually end up getting too heavy. So we'll put a lid on it and we'll go back to the stove. We'll keep it nice and warm. The way that I grew up, we would put mashed potatoes like under like the bed covers and like under blankets, like in a pot to keep it warm. Like especially like during like holiday like celebrations and stuff, like when mashed potatoes needed to be made in advance for like very like big groups of people. Like I would come back and I would see that my bed has a pot under the blanket. I'd always be so annoyed about it, but it's pretty funny. All right, I'm gonna give the sauce a little taste test. Give it a taste. Really, really yummy. That is super flavorful. You're getting some of the meatiness from the chicken fat and then also all the fond, the meatiness of the mushrooms, the sweetness from the onions. It's still a little too acidic, so we're gonna evaporate this a little bit more, finish it with cream, and then add the pork chops on in. That'll be awesome. We're in the final stages of the operation. Is everybody ready for the final product? I know I am. I'm ready to eat. And you can see now, it's thickening up really, really nicely. Okay, it's thickening up. It's getting exactly where we want it to be. We can even do, if you want to cheat a little bit, if you want to get some more meatiness into the whole, well, it's not cheating, it's just a thing that you can do. We can even get a little shake of some chicken bouillon in here because I don't have any stock. Right, I did this without stock, so a little bit of chicken bouillon could go a long way in this. Ideally, you'd use chicken stock or beef stock or pork stock. I didn't have any of that on hand, so that's what I did. Okay, take a look at this. Look how glossy this is now. Look how glossy, look how delicious this looks now. Okay? Look at that. Really, really lovely. Let's give it another taste. Let's see how it's doing on seasoning. That's good. That's really good. Yeah, you're getting the onions, you're getting the mushrooms. It's everything that you've ever wanted and more. So let's reduce this a little bit more, and then we'll finish it with the cream and pork chops. Could you add flour to make it thicker faster? Nameless, you can, but the idea is you want it to reduce. You want it to reduce so that you're concentrating the flavors. If you added flour now to thicken it, it's going to be too diluted. Okay? And I'm not looking for diluted flavors. I want a really, really delicious, flavorful sauce here. I'm just putting some stuff away into the dishwasher while I have a moment of time. Oof. And we're going to go in with the cream in just a second, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I know I'm juggling a lot of different things at once. I just have a lot to do today. Okay, let's take a look at this. Yeah, look at that. Look at the way that it pulls back now, right? Look at the way that it's holding its shape. That's telling us that this sauce is getting nice and thick. Let's turn down that heat because that heat is way too aggressive. Okay, let's go in with the milk. It's milk time, baby. Oh, not milk, cream. As much cream as you would like. This is going to help just make it be a little bit richer. Okay? Let's give that another taste. Yummy. That's really good. Big splash of milk. Or cream, excuse me. That's going in. And we're also going to do some more salt. We're turning down the heat. I want more seasoning in this. I want some more salt. And I want some more pepper. And now, I hope you didn't forget about the pork chops. The pork chops are almost done on the inside. We're going to stir in all this cream before it breaks or anything on us. We're stirring in all this fresh cream. The whole thing is getting nice and pink, nice and burgundy almost. Oh yeah, all right. We're scraping up those sides yet again. We're making sure that everything is incorporated into the sauce. And now we plunge in our beautiful little pork chops with all of the resting liquid. And we'll just let that go and heat it up over the course of 2 minutes or so. And all the resting juices. Look at that. Really nice, isn't it? I think that's pretty good. No unsalted butter. Robert, it has already plenty of butter inside of it. It has plenty of butter. It has plenty of fat. We added butter when we were making the roux portion of it. Okay? And again, this is mostly right now, we just want to get the internal temp fully there. Again, I'm shooting for around like 140 internal. That's the texture of the pork chop that I want for today. You really do not want to overcook these at this stage. So we're just flipping it around. We're going to move it around a little bit. Also, welcome in, Robert Bob. But this is the final stage. Oh, one last thing. I wanted to cook down some of the parsley. I wanted some of the parsley to become a part of the sauce. Because I wanted this to be like a parsley sauce, right? So, adding that back in, right? And again, I'm just going to be occasionally flipping over these pork chops just to make sure they're evenly heating back up, they're evenly cooking through, not just one side of it. And the whole thing is getting nice and thick again. Beautiful. Oof. Are you excited? I'm excited. I'm gonna put some things away now. I don't need my wine anymore. I'm not gonna be drinking any wine. I'm gonna be going out tonight. I'm going to a little show tonight, a little party tonight. I know. I have something to do on a Friday. Who'd have thought? Yeah, and Moonha doesn't matter too much. I don't want the parsley to get like overcooked. I just wanted some of it to get cooked into the sauce and some of it is going to get garnished. Okay? So, we'll flip this over again. Using tongs would probably be ideal, but I'm using just a spatula and a spoon in tandem. Okay, excellent. It's all coming together, baby. It's all coming together. One last minute of cook time, and then we'll plate it up. Oh yeah, Moonha, you can absolutely criticize me. Anybody can criticize me. I welcome that. So you're totally fine to do so. Even I know that's not what you were doing, but I'm saying even if that is what you were doing, it would be okay. I just don't like it when people don't listen after they prove them wrong. That happened once. Okay, everybody, I think this is done. This is where I want my pork chops. Let's get a little taste of that sauce one more time. That is delicious. That is so rich. That is so creamy. Okay, everybody, you ready to plate up? I want to hear one more yes, chef, please and thank you. All right, let's plate up. I want a nice big plate. Remember, we intentionally kept our mashed potatoes a little bit light. We intentionally kept it a little bit light so that when we pour over all of a really, really delicious sauce, it's not going to be too fatty or anything like that, right? So it's a little bit on the lighter side. It's not too much cream, it's not too much butter. Let's do a nice big, healthy spoonful of that. Nice and chunky, nice and rustic, right? That's a good mashed potato. Damn. Okay. That's the mashed potato. And now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our pan. Ooh, that's hot. We're going to take our pan and we're going to scoop in one of these pork chops. That's my portion for today. And now, the most important component of everything is the sauce. The mushrooms, the cream, the red wine, all of it goes on now. Okay? All of it. Get the mushrooms in there. That's what I'm talking about. It does not need more potato, Duolingo. That is the perfect amount of potato for me. Well, I mean, for you, you could have more potato. Let's move the sauce around a little bit. We can get it to just pour around slightly. And then over the pork chop, we're going to do a little bit more parsley. Just on top. Just to make the whole thing really nice and pretty. Everybody, guess what? We've done it. We've officially accomplished our mission. This is the kind of a thing that people have a lot of really negative associations with. Look how simple. I mean, this was ultimately really, really simple. We've treated the pork with a lot of love, a lot of care, a lot of affection. We made a really beautiful sauce for it. All right, let's talk about everything that we've made. Everybody, I appreciate all of you watching thus far. We made two things here. We made a pork chop and we made a little mashed potato. Mashed potato, clean, simple. Yukon Gold potatoes. We peeled it up because I wanted a nice smooth texture. We simmered it, we poached it. We didn't boil it, so it didn't get overcooked. We simmered it and we added some milk, we added some cream, we added some butter. Pork chops, we dry brined it. We cleaned it up off of its connective tissue. We pounded it out a little bit and we floured it. We pan fried it in some chicken fat. We took it out. We added mushrooms. We added mushrooms with water, evaporated the water, added in the rest of the chicken fat, added in some butter, added in my red onions, sauteed the whole thing, added some garlic, added some flour to toast the flour, and then I added some red wine to deglaze. We reduced the red wine. We filled it back up with some more liquid. We added some parsley, we added some soy sauce, and we added a touch of cream at the end. And then the mashed potatoes. The mashed potatoes, they're going to soak up. They're going to perfectly soak up all of this beautiful sauce. Okay? And we have these lovely little bites of mushrooms throughout all of it too. Everybody, cheers. Let's have a bite. That sauce is so good. With the potatoes just a canvas for the... My knife. The potato is just a canvas for the sauce. Let's take a nice little slice of the pork chop, right? You can see it's not hammered to death on the inside. It cut nice and easy. Let's take a bite. I think this is the decal. Oh, goodness. That's a tender pork chop. Everybody, I need you to understand something. This is not butcher shop quality meat. I bought this at my local store for $3 a pound. And yet, it's tender, and it's soft, and it's perfectly toothsome. It's got the right bite. These are not the, impossible to chew pork chops that you grew up with, because we didn't overcook it. We kept it nice and tender. We trimmed off any excess connective tissue. It's got a lovely texture. It's got a lovely chew to it. You can see how easy that was. And that was all possible because we didn't overcook these things. That is a lovely pork chop. You cannot go wrong with something like that. And yet it's still moist because we dry brined it beforehand. Come here. It's still perfectly moist because we dry brined it beforehand. Okay. Excellent. And the mashed potatoes with that sauce. Man, that's so good. And it's so simple. Guys, you saw how easy this was. So tender, so delicious. And that's it. Everybody, that's the pork. Does anybody have any final questions? I hope you all enjoyed the show today. Before we sign off really quickly. Oh yeah, I'll have some water. If you haven't done so already, guys, please support the Patreon. I want to keep these streams free. I want to keep teaching you all how to cook. It really helps with the grocery costs because groceries are expensive. You can type in !Patreon. You can scroll down, you can go into the About section. Okay? If you have any other questions, now is the time to let me know. I'm here to help you learn how to cook. Next stream is going to be this Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd also like, yes, as Moonhut just said, you can also donate. You can go follow that link to donate to really help with the cost of everything. It'd be really appreciated. And if not, a sub is also good too. Let's go ahead and find who else is live at the moment. And we'll give them a little grade. Let's see. Okay, my friend T is live. We're going to go ahead and grade T. That's what we'll do. She's playing Secure. Okay. That'll be good. Let's grade. Everybody, thank you all for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. Next stream is going to be this Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for the lovely audience as always. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for letting me do what I love here. Have a really good rest of your Friday. Have fun. Be safe. And I will see you all really soon in just a couple of days. So till then, take care and bye.